And welcome to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for joining us on Monday. It's July 24th, 106 right now, and temperatures outside are getting hot. It's only going to get warmer over the next handful of days before we start to see a little bit of relief towards the end of this week. We'll be going over that forecast here in just a moment. Current temperature is 87. Wind is out of the northeast at 3 miles an hour. Hey, if you want to be a part of the program today, have any questions, want to get anything answered, give us a call on the Red Wing Shoes phone line. That's 701-293-9000. Again, phone number for the program is 701-293-9000, or you can always reach us via email at weatherorag@flagfamily.com. As well, we live stream each and every single day on Facebook and YouTube Live, as well as Acres TV. Coming up on the program today, got a few guests in studio with me, and that's going to be Miki Miheguli. She is a research program coordinator from the Soybean Council, as well as Dallas Loff, a soybean farmer down in Wahpeton, as well as the director, Soybean of Council District 1, and Dr. Joe Ikley, Extension Weed Specialist, is in the studio with me. So we're going to be talking about weed and weed resistance, different types of herbicides, as well as what's going on around the area and how the weather's affecting the crops out there, because I know that a few places have been put into drought category along the Canadian border, South Dakota border, portions of Minnesota, and a few portions across North Dakota, so we'll go across that as well. But speaking of drought conditions, is there any relief? Yeah, there is a little bit. Not everyone's going to see it, unfortunately. I've only got a couple of chances for rain in the forecast here, and maybe a few of us will get lucky today and get an isolated pop-up shower. That's going to be slim at best. The rest of the day, most of the area is going to be hazy sunshine. Like I said, 87 is our current temperature. We're shooting for highs near 94 today, and we'll be in the low to mid-90s across eastern North Dakota and the Lakes country with light and variable wind. And we'll start to see the clouds thicken up as we head into the overnight hours. Temperatures stay warm and the upper 60s near 70. Wind turns out of the southeast about 5 miles an hour. And then we introduce our first likelier chance for a few light scattered showers and a few isolated storms through tomorrow afternoon and evening. And tomorrow late afternoon and evening storms, a couple of them could be on the strong to severe side, and that's favoring around the Jamestown area and then tracking down into the southern valley, with the main concern being some localized areas of wind and possibly some hail damage. That will come on Tuesday evening. As for the rest of the week, a pop-up storm is possible on Wednesday. Otherwise, it's partly cloudy. It's our hottest day of the week. It's going to be humid. Temperatures are in the mid to upper 90s. Wind isn't too bad, but still gusting to 20 out of the southwest at times. We'll get another slight chance or a little round of some scattered showers coming through Wednesday night, then a chance for some thunderstorms on Thursday afternoon. But none of these chances are extremely overly likely. They're going to be more isolated than wider spread, but it should still give a good amount of people, I'd say, at least 1/10 of an inch of rain. And for those that get caught under the storms, will likely fall somewhere between 1/4 inch and 3/4 of an inch of rain, and with an exception to a few places that get entrained by several storms over the next 5 days, might get lucky and see over an inch of rain. So it's much needed. And I know that our soybeans have been handling the heat and the drought pretty well, but I was wondering how everyone else's crops out there are handling now getting put into abnormally dry D1 drought conditions across portions of the area. So if you want to call in and chime in on what the crops look like out there, you can give us a call again on 701-293-9000. And I'm going to go over to Dallas. Dallas is joining us here on Weather and Ag in Focus today. Dallas Loff. Thanks for coming into the studio, guys. Appreciate all three of you coming in and joining me to talk all about, agriculture, weeds, and farming. And how are your crops doing? Because you're farming down near Wahpeton. You're growing soybeans, correct?
Yeah, correct. I farm about 30 miles south of Fargo here, closer to Colfax. But corn, soybeans, and sugar beets on the farm. Most of it's doing pretty good. Mm-hmm. The beans are kind of in a critical spot right now of flowering and whatnot, and they could use a drink for sure. The corn and sugar beets are hanging on fine, but also would appreciate a drink too. So, yeah, but the glass is half full right now. Yeah,
I feel that, and like I've been saying, it's been dry, but the little rains that we've been getting, in a way, have been coming in a timely manner. Would you agree with that, or has it been you've been getting missed by some of those isolated showers over the last month?
Well, of course, it feels like you miss most of them, right?
Oh, of course. You always hope you get hit by all of them.
Yeah, but right on. The 10th and 2/10thers, they seem to be coming like, oh, yeah, we definitely could use it. And, the crop's at a stage where it is really appreciated. So we'll take what we can get.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. And I wanted to get your opinion on this because you're kind of dealing with the same thing we did here in Fargo end of May, June. It was dry, it was really hot, and we were kind of worried that might, kind of hinder the performance of the soybeans just a little bit. Did you notice any, I'd say, performance loss from the beans when we went through that, or do you think it's kind of a blessing in disguise that we got dry? They had the early heat stress, so they kind of get a little acclimated to it, or at least they're like, hey, I've been through this before, I know what to do, and it forced them to put the roots down deep to tap into moisture further down than kind of focusing on the surface moisture.
Yeah, that there, I would say. Yeah, hotter earlier, I'll take that. And then when the rains come later, I'd take that too. But it doesn't seem to be coming in that order right now this year. But yeah, early on, if we can get the heat in May and June, that usually gets the crop going quickly, and that's what we're looking for. So
right. So I would imagine you'd probably be concerned if we really just don't really get any more moisture.
Yeah,
for a couple of weeks, because it's a pretty critical state for a lot of different crops, but we'll focus on soybeans because that's what we got for our Here We Grow project. That's what you're growing.
Yeah, right on. The soybeans could definitely use it the most out of any of the crops, at least on my farm, and I'm guessing probably across the state too. Soybeans it's a critical point right now for them.
Right, and I want to ask because imagine you got, people around the area. How are they handling it? You got anyone up in the Northern Valley, out in central North Dakota, Minnesota? Any friends out there farming that got property?
Oh, I sure do, but I guess I wouldn't be able to speak for them right now. I wouldn't be able to say.
All right. And we'll kind of tie this in a little bit with different weeds across the area because we're starting to come across more herbicide resistance and whatnot. So, Dr. Joe Ikley, I was wondering if you could maybe chime in on this a little bit on what are the main concerns with keeping weeds and herbicides and why we pay so close attention to what's going on with them.
Well, I mean, at its basic core, the reason we want to control weeds is to protect our crop yields. So they can directly compete with our crops for light, water, nutrients, things like that. And basically the quickest, cheapest way we've been able to have weed control be successful in the history of cultivated farming is with herbicides. If you just look at the cost point and how many acres we can cover and control a wide spectrum of weeds, that's really been the go-to for us for basically since the 1950s or so, when we first got synthetic herbicides. And so we basically want to be able to continue to use those tools to control our weeds, but we do have resistance popping up into several key weed species, and that becomes a challenge when we can't control them with the herbicides we basically want to utilize. If we look at a crop like soybean, it's usually broadleaf weeds, so very similar to soybeans themselves, more difficult to control within a soybean crop. And we want to protect the herbicides that we still have on the market so we can control those weeds. And again, ultimately the end goal there is to protect crop yields, make sure we can get the best yields that we can for all the soybean acres.
Right. So when we're talking about herbicide resistance, could you say this is kind of, in a way, similar to people when they get an infection, they go and they get a antibiotic from the doctor, but sometimes those antibiotics don't work because you come across a bacteria strain that's antibiotic resistance, and you gotta, in a way, bump up to a bigger category antibiotic, or they have to do something else to combat that?
It's exactly the same concept, and I like to think of it as if we talk about bacteria within our human system, our human bodies, that's a pest, the way I think about it. And for weeds, that's a pest we're trying to control within our crop field. And it's the exact same concept that we have a molecule with the humans, an antibiotic, with weeds, a herbicide, that once controlled certain populations, and for various reasons we can get resistance and no longer control certain biotypes or strains or populations with that herbicide, or in humans with that antibiotic, and have to switch gears, find a different way to control that same pest.
I see. And I want to ask you one more thing here before we hit our 117-ish break somewhere in there. Why focus on weeds? What's the importance of keeping them under control? Is there, some people might think, well, why not just let them grow? What are the impacts on farming and agriculture as a whole when it comes to being able to control different weeds that are in your field and affecting your crops? How much does it actually affect your crop?
So the main thing, as I said, is protecting that yield, because weeds will rob all the things that the crops want as well. Water, nutrients. Water is probably shown particularly well for some of those entering the drought phases right now. If you have weedy fields, they're going to use up the water. Some of them are quicker at using water than our crops are. Mm-hmm. And so basically the worst case that we can have with some weeds is it's rare, but we can have complete crop loss in the case of a particularly problematic weed with a high density across the field. But on average, we're losing 10, 20, maybe even 30% of some of our crops in these high weedy infestations. And that's kind of, it's also very visible method of yield loss. Things like pathogens, insects might not always be as showy from the road. But there's also, like I said, the main point, we want to protect those yields. But there is kind of I also want that to be a clean-looking field as I drive past it, too. That's always in the back of our minds.
Right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk more about different weed controls, as well as the herbicide resistance and what weeds we're trying to focus on. And we'll learn a little bit more about that as well. And we'll also kind of start tossing into a direction of the Soybean Council and exactly what it is, how it works, how it operates, and why it's important to have around. So again, if you have any questions, you want to join in on the conversation, 701-293-9000, or you can always send those emails to weatherorag@flagfamily.com. Stay tuned. Weather and Ag in Focus. We'll be right back.
Rev up your engines for Track Talk with Jason Berg, the ultimate racing radio show every Monday night at 6:30 on WDAY Radio. From the hottest drivers, latest racing news and analysis, to recaps of the best dirt track races in the region. All live from O'Kelly's Bar and Grill. If the dirt's flying, you can bet Jason Berg is covering it. Track Talk is brought to you in part by Gateway Chevrolet, Brady's Service, O'Kelly's Bar and Grill, Magnum Contracting, and WDAY Radio.
Boost your crop's health with Domark 230ME and Badge SC fungicide exclusively from Gowan, USA. Domark's systematic action teams up with Badge's outstanding mixing properties for unbeaten disease control on sugar beets, dried edible beans, and canola. Experience the power of two different modes of action with Domark and Badge. Don't wait. Contact your local ag retailer and ask about Domark 230ME and Badge SC. Always read and follow label directions from Gowan, USA.
Keep your cool while the kids are out of school. Get a Kingpin Summer Bowling Pass and enjoy unlimited daytime bowling all summer break. Kingpins features hyper bowling, a new way to play. Hit the lights, earn multipliers, and score thousands of points. The kids, the family will love it. A summer bowling pass at Kingpins is just $30 per person. A summer of fun for everyone at Kingpins. Head to kingpins.com for more info or come and play for yourself. Find them at 3485 Jacks Way, South in Fargo. And it's time for the ultimate taco bar for lunch at Barron's. It's all-you-can-eat taco bar Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. for only $10.99. Kingpin Summer Bowling Pass and all-you-can-eat taco bar at Barron's. This is the summer we were looking for.
Hey, Ronnie, grilling season finally here this weekend. I'm going to sit on my deck with a cold beer and watch Alex grill some meat.
Speaking of meat, Jay, our great friends from Meats by John and Wayne will be giving away a meat bundle this Thursday on your show. All you have to do is listen for the call-in song. Cheeseburger in paradise. And be the 9th caller.
Ronnie, there's a reason those guys have been voted best butcher shop in the Red River Valley since 2016. Meats by John and Wayne. All your meat needs.
Track Talk is live at O'Kelly's Bar and Grill each Monday evening. Remember, happy hour is 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. with $1 off wells and tall taps plus half-price apps. And right now, you can get Bush Light Pounders for just $5 each. So come to O'Kelly's for delicious apps like bruschetta, street tacos, wings, stuffed mushrooms, shrimp skewers, or bacon Brussels sprouts half-price weekdays 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Come for the apps and drink specials 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. and stay for Track Talk live at O'Kelly's each Monday. I-29 in Maine and Fargo.
Hi, I'm Kevin Wolf, president of Laney's. Do you have your air conditioner serviced each year? Did you know that this service can pay for itself and also extend the life of your equipment? If not, you need to consider Laney's for all of your planned maintenance needs. Our technicians will ensure that your equipment is operating safely and efficiently. So for peace of mind, call us today at 237-0543 or visit us on the web at laneysinc.com.
828 is just great.
The 21st annual Cruise to Castleton is Thursday, July 27th. The free show features hundreds of classic cars. Shuttle buses will run from the school parking lot to the show, with raffle tickets sold for a 1941 Chevy two-door sedan. Sponsored by
Bremer Bank, Cass County Wildlife Club, TNT Concrete, Jerry's Excavating, and Pizza Ranch of Castleton.
Find out more online at swanks.org or Swanks Car Club Facebook page. The 21st annual Swanks Cruise to Castleton, Thursday, July 27th.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for rejoining us. It's 1:22 this afternoon. Check on the weather out there. 87 degrees, hazy, sunshine. Wind is fairly calm out of the northeast at 3 miles an hour. We'll have another check at that forecast coming up throughout the show. But going back to our conversation on different types of weeds and weed control and other kind of herbicide-resistant weeds and what do you do if you come across this, we're going to kind of dive into what are some of the big key players across North Dakota and what are maybe emerging threats. So, Dr. Joe Ikley, what's out there right now? What's the big thing that people are talking about that they're keeping an eye on, and maybe any possible emerging threats that are coming up here?
Yeah, so statewide, when we look at herbicide-resistant weeds, and most of our herbicide-resistant weeds do fall within annual row crop production. So it's kind of a separate discussion from noxious weeds and some of our tough-to-control ones, but that don't have resistance. So when I look at some of our most problematic weeds that everyone's kind of battling right now, statewide, kochia is number one in my mind. So just that's weed can be found everywhere, is very competitive in our environment, and against basically any crop that we plant. Next on my list, if I look at footprint and just how troublesome it can become, will be water hemp. Between kochia and water hemp, two very problematic weeds, especially for soybean production. A lot of that has to do with how well adapted they are to our region, but a lot of that does have to do with herbicide resistance that we have found in both kochia and water hemp across the state.
Okay. And Dallas, have you come across any of this? I'm imagining you probably have, dealing with growing different types of crops down there. And you said it was by Colfax, was it?
Yeah, right on.
So what have you come across? Any herb-resistant weeds down there that you've had to tackle?
Yeah, for sure. The first one I say would be water hemp. That was the first one that got us. And I suppose it's over 5 years, probably closer to 10 now that we've been dealing with that. And just this year, kochia kind of showed its face on our farm. Mm-hmm. Haven't had that one we've had kochia on the farm, but this is the first year I can honestly say that something didn't kill it.
So what happens if you run into this type of situation? If you find a weed-resistant weed that nothing's taking it out and it's just continuing to take over your field, what do you do? Do you got to find other different types of weed management? What does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes you don't have options depending upon the crop. In soybeans' sake, we're lucky enough to have the variety that it can handle different chemicals, and so we end up tank mixing or adding more different chemicals to the tank to to focus on that resistant weeds and to help with or do a lot of the heavy lifting that the main chemical that you wanted to spray can't do.
Right. And just since we brought that up, I want to hit it really quick. When we talk about different herbicides and spraying our crops with different chemicals, and you see the big 1,000-gallon sprayer heading through the field, or the planes that fly overhead and they're dropping all the sprays on the plants, that's not all chemical, and it's mixed pretty heavily diluted with water, where if you got a 1,000-gallon tanker, it's probably more than 950 gallons of that is actually just water. That's correct, right? Because you only use maybe a little red Solo cup per so many acres.
Yeah, depending upon the chemical, some of it goes down to 2 to 3 ounces an acre, and then you're still, putting that in the same 1,000-gallon sprayer, if you will. So if you're doing 10 gallons of the acre, that's 100 acres, and you're putting in maybe a quart total depending upon chemicals. Some of them are larger, Roundup or Enlist, if you will, or a quart per acre, or slightly more depending upon what loads you're using and whatnot. But still at the end of it, maybe 5 gallons, or I'd have to do the math, but 5 to 10 gallons of actual product versus the rest of the tank being filled with water.
All just
the
water.
carrier, yeah.
Very diluted, and it's sprayed over a very wide area.
Yep.
But I'll go back to the weed resistance. Me and Bridgette have talked a lot about different fun ways to take care of weeds. We've talked about the tasers, the flamethrowers, the little ones that shoot actually laser beams. Apparently you shoot them with a beam of light or something, and
that sounds like a new one. I haven't heard of that one yet.
Have you used any of those?
No laser beams in the fields out on our farm. Not yet, anyways.
So what happens if you come across different resistance to weeds? Are you supposed to report that?
Well, yes, I'll yield back to Dr. Joe Ikley or Miki to answer that.
Sure. Miki, do you want to take it up?
Yes. I think not necessarily report. I think the management is the name of the game here. If farmers have some resistant weeds in your fields, it's basically spray the fields with herbicides and monitor right after spraying. After a few days, go out and check to see if that herbicide actually worked in that field or not. If it worked, which weed species it's worked and which weed species it's failed. So having accurate notes on that will allow farmers to select or better select herbicides that can work next time around and identify issues if they have herbicide resistance. Then next time when they select, maybe find a different mode of actions to control that weeds instead of using the same mode of action year after year. And also when it comes to herbicide resistance, you talk about how to manage or how do we control those weeds. Obviously, using the herbicides to kill those weeds is one way, but I think Dr. Joe Ikley have been promoting integrated weed management a lot, trying to increase planting density, trying to use some cover crops if you can. Obviously, we cannot use cover crops all the time, but when opportunity come up, you can use some cover crops, trying to suppress those weed populations as well. Or seed early or seed late, trying to avoid those weed populations going ahead of your crop. So those are some of the integrated pest management methods that growers can integrate into their cropping systems. Obviously, using herbicide is one of the main ways, but there are some other ways that they can incorporate into their cropping system.
Right. And Joe, I'm going to come to you on that cover crop comment here in just a moment. But when you were talking about larger populations that you're planting in your field, you're referring to putting in more plants over the same amount of area in hopes that they leaf out fast enough and they cover the ground so they rob the weeds of any sunlight to slow and stop them down. And that's one way that you can combat that, right?
Absolutely. That's about the competition. Whatever, if the crops are ahead of the weed, crops will take off better. If the weeds are ahead of the crop, then weeds will establish better than the crop. So there's always a competition in the field, and growers can manage them and use it for their own advantage.
Right. And would you say that that's a practice that a lot of people are using or adopting? I don't know if this is something new or if it's just something that's been around for a long time. Do you see more and more people using that technique?
Yeah, I think the concept is not new. I think we have been integrating or recommending farmers to use those kind of concepts or integrated weed management for a very long time, and they are implementing that. It's not the farmers are only using herbicides, but in the cases, it sometimes the windows may not work with your operations and timings. I think farmers are using it, and this is not a new concept. And more farmers are trying to use it as well.
I was going to say, because I have a friend of mine who farms down in New Ulm in southern Minnesota. I was telling him that we're growing our 20 acres, and we've been kind of bouncing a bunch of stuff around, and he's been talking to me about things. I'm like, what did you just say? Slow down. It's my first year farming. I don't know what you're talking about. But we got onto the topic of what we were planting, our population of our 20 acres. And it was like 140 or 144,000, I think, is what the population was on our field. And he's like, what? I've never heard of anyone planting that high on beans before. And I think they're about 120,000 down in New Ulm. I don't know if that's just them or if that's what they do down there or what, but he thought that was kind of interesting. And I was just thinking maybe that's why we decided to plant such a higher population if that's not normal. Again, I don't know if 144 is a lot or not per acre, but that might be one of the reasons to try and close the canopy up between the rows faster so you don't have to worry about spraying quite as much to combat those weeds. But Joe, before we head to break, I want to go back to the cover crop thing. What is a cover crop and what's the importance of it, and how build a little bit more on Miki on how it can be used to combat weeds?
Right, so at its most basic, a cover crop is basically to cover the soil in between cropping seasons. It's kind of how we've come to define the term. So we generally, if we look at soybeans, we plant in the spring, harvest in the fall, and then that ground is going to be bare all winter. So we can throw something green out there like a cover crop to keep that ground covered throughout the winter. So there's other benefits that we've really started using cover crops for, keeping the soil anchored, some soil health benefits, maybe reclaiming some nutrients. And then since there's already a plant out there that's usually quite dense, we've started looking at, well, how can that help us with weed control? Because as Miki kind of indicated, more, in this case, a crop or a cover crop per acre, better weed suppressive capabilities is kind of a concept we've known of for a while. So can we use that cover crop to help suppress weeds early in the season before we terminate it or kill it off to plant our cash crop? So that's kind of the basics behind what we've been exploring with using a cover crop for weed control. So something that's already out there for a benefit, what else can we get out of it?
Cool. Perfect. Well, we're going to hit bottom of the hour break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what the North Dakota Soybean Council is and what they're doing, any programs they got going on, and how we're managing everything that we've just been talking about. So again, if you have any questions, you want to call in 701-293-9000 or just stay tuned because we'll be right back.
Creative Planning presents Rethink Your Money with John Hagenson, Sunday at 6 a.m. Creative Planning is a wealth management firm that believes in a total approach to building wealth that includes taxes, insurance, estate planning, and other personalized elements. This approach allows you to receive advice that is aligned with your unique goals and always in your best interests. Why not give your wealth a second look? Visit creativeplanning.com. That's creativeplanning.com.
You're invited to worship with us at Olivet Lutheran Church in Fargo. We offer a 9 a.m. Sunday traditional service with communion where all are welcome to participate. If you can't worship with us in person, you can always watch live or later on our YouTube channel. Following worship, we have time for fellowship with coffee and donuts and light service projects like packing up food for our food pantry. For more information, go to olivet.org. Encounter Jesus, experience grace at Olivet Lutheran Church on the corner of 13th Avenue and South University Drive, Fargo.
Saracet client Joe.
7 years ago, I was in a serious accident and suffered life-altering injuries. I had continuous headaches, sensitivity to lights and noise, was dizzy, and had debilitating fatigue. I accepted this life, one of pain, depression, and loneliness, and then I heard of Saracet. After the third session, I woke up with hope. I'm pain-free, my mind is clear. I'm a recipient of a miracle. Thank you, Saracet.
Find out how Saracet can help you. 701-566-5231.
It's about tradition, values, and family ties. Pucklet Chevrolet GMC's tradition of giving back to our community remains a priority, and that's why we've partnered with many local nonprofit organizations and events. And our tradition of giving this community a fair and honest offer continues. Right now, you can save over $6,000 on select new Chevy Silverado 1500s. We're Pucklet Chevrolet GMC in Valley City. Tradition, values, and family ties.
See dealer for details.
Get these fantastic July specials on now at PetroServe, like Red Bull 20 ounce 2 for $7 and Red Bull 8 ounce 3 for $6. Nestle 28 packs of water $4.69. Giant sunflower seeds $1.39. iGog sunglasses $2 off any pair. Little Trees 99 cents. Stun guns $5 off. PetroServe, there's one near you.
Helping America fuel better. PetroServe USA.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
Do you have heart failure and often hear,
"Those stomach issues ruined your birthday"?
"You're too tired to play catch, Grandpa."
Sweetie, you haven't touched your tools since the carpal tunnel syndrome diagnosis.
If these seemingly unrelated symptoms sound familiar, talk to your cardiologist and ask about transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy, or ATTR-CM, a rare and underdiagnosed disease that gets worse over time. Learn more at connecttoyourheart.com. That's connecttoyourheart.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Yeah, I'm so stressed. Our business is growing. We've got people all over now.
Ooma.
What is that? Meditation?
I'm recommending the Ooma cloud phone system with auto attendant and more than 50 features.
Ooma?
Yep, switching to Ooma is a cinch. Just $24.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Now you're feeling it. Find small business calm at ooma.com/radio. That's OOMA.com/radio.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus. Thanks for rejoining us right now. It's 1:38 this afternoon. Lots of sunshine out there. Temperatures are approaching that 90-degree mark. Heat index in the low 90s right now. Actual air temperature is about 88 with a northeast wind at 3 miles an hour. Got another check on the forecast coming up here in just a moment, but just to summarize it, it's hot and hazy for the next couple days, but we'll dive more into detail with that. Program phone number 701-293-9000. Before we went to our last break, we were kind of touching on herbicide-resistant weeds across the area, and what do you do if you come across them? And we learned that it's not required to report that, but it's probably a good thing if you did, because the North Dakota Soybean Council kind of manages that. Does it not, Miki, Joe? You guys kind of, you were saying that knowledge is power, and within the council that kind of helps out what to keep an eye out for?
Right, so I'll kind of start before kicking it over to Miki and the Soybean Council that, as you indicated, no requirement to report if you have resistance. But we certainly encourage those, if you think you have resistance, or even if you're dealing with a weed that's more problematic. At NDSU, we're dealing with education and research, and we kind of rely on that knowledge to help us figure out what we need to work on, what research we need to conduct, and it's kind of similar with the Soybean Council. And so if we know there's a lot of, we'll just say, water hemp with herbicide resistance out there, it can really help drive research priorities with the Soybean Council, and that we can then work with at NDSU as well. And so I think that's where it's kind of a good idea to evaluate how the Soybean Council is maybe managing priorities based on what's actually occurring out there with in soybean fields.
Right. So, Miki, what would you say about that as well, with the people reporting that, and then add on to it maybe before, what is the North Dakota Soybean Council? Because I'm not entirely sure. I'm sure there's probably a few people out there who haven't heard of it before, but what's the North Dakota Soybean Council, and how is that information useful for you guys?
Mm-hmm. We are North Dakota Soybean Council, a farmer-funded and farmer-led organization supported by 10,000 soybean farmers across the state. Every farmer invests in soybean checkoff to support, fund research, market development, promotion, and education activities administered by North Dakota Soybean Council. So we have 5 different strategic priorities, including market development, production and plant breeding research, biodiesel, soybean new uses research, as well as public relations. Our vision is growing the legacy of successful farmer, and our mission is innovating to expand partnerships, markets, opportunities for the success of North Dakota Soybean Council. as you can hear, I repeated myself again and again about farmers and stress the word farmers. We are farmer-funded, farmer-led organization, and at Joe's point, Joe is absolutely correct on the importance of research and us being able to understand the priorities and actual production issues across the state so that we can set priorities and support the research of experts like Dr. Joe Ikley at NDSU to get some of the research work done. To me, research really has to be front and center of herbicide resistant weed management. Without staying on top of herbicide weed management through research and best management practices, I should say science-based best management practices, we are going to be fall behind in terms of weed management and other issues, and the soybean yields will end up being impacted and our production is going to be being impacted. So at the end of the day, farmers are not going to be that profitable or produce high quality, high yielding soybeans in the state. So it all comes down to us contacting with farmers and knowing their priorities and being able to direct our research dollars to address those production issues.
I see. And Miki, you're the research program coordinator, correct, with the Soybean Council?
Yes.
So what kind of research is being done or looked into with the Soybean Council for the area?
Mm-hmm. We fund a lot of different research in our research program. We had two strategic initiatives. One is production and plant breeding research. In this one, we invest in production practices and plant breeding research to improve current and long-term success for North Dakota soybean farmers. And the other one is soybean new uses research. That's somewhat new for us. In this one, we invest in new uses projects for North Dakota soybean with the potential to increase the high volume or high value of the soybeans. Mm-hmm. So these are two different research programs, and we have two large requests for funding opportunities to various research institutions to address those issues. Again, one being plant production and breeding research, and another one is soybean new uses research. We try to address production issues and find new uses for soybeans so that the use of soybeans or the soybeans can be used a lot of different purposes. As you know, soybeans are not only used for cooking right now. It's used for fuel, fiber, and consumption as well. So our world is growing, and we would like to be able to address all those production issues and find more opportunities for farmers.
Right, and there's a lot of things that a lot of people probably aren't familiar with that soybeans are used for. I mean, they have such an endless purpose with the soybean oil and other parts of them from, I mean, my list has just been growing. I found out that they use soybean oil in electrical wire, the insulation on the electrical wire, tires, shoes, turf. We're finding different renewable resources, but soybean-based petroleum that's been being used and jet fuel. So I think that's super cool and interesting. Any big ones maybe I missed that someone's like, wow, I didn't know that soybeans were used in that? Anything off the top of your head that just kind of sticks out like, yeah, this is cool that this is what our soybeans can sometimes be used for?
Uh-huh. I think you hit a lot of the important uses that we found for soybean. Again, the biodiesel or renewable fuel is pretty big one, and the consumption for this has continued to grow. And we have some projects that we funded this year that are trying to use soybean oil for lubrications, which is the industrial use. We have some projects that are trying to use soybean oil for painting products, and even we are trying to find the use of soybean for agriculture. And one of the very exciting projects that we work with at North Dakota Soybean at the NDSU with engineering department is the use of soybean on the biodegradable straw twine for farmers as well. It's project is progressing really well. We probably will see more exciting results in the next few years. So like you said, we have a lot of different uses for soybean, and it continued to grow.
I thought it was kind of cool. I was strolling through Target with my wife, and she was looking for some little gifts for a few people, and we were walking through the arts and the arts, writing utensils and whatnot, and we saw one of the boxes, and it was a bunch of pens, and it said fully made with soybean-based plastic as a renewable source for these plastics, which I thought was kind of neat. Dallas, I'm going to go to you because you're the director of the Soybean Council for District 1. What does that mean? What is your role, or what do you do with the council as the director in District 1?
Oh, still learning. So the state's chopped up into, I suppose, a dozen districts, and it's based on kind of, let's just say, acreage, perhaps, and so Cass County, Richland County are kind of two of your hotter spots when it comes to soybean production, and so Richland County is its own district. I'm the representative of that. I sit on the research committee with Miki, and learning lots of things on the way of what soybeans are used for, potential new things that people are trying to invent ideas for, and new uses. And you kind of, I don't know, bless them, and they take off and they turn into something, and sometimes they don't. But yeah, it's pretty cool, I guess.
That sure sounds cool, and it's been going to be interesting to see in the next couple of years. We've come a long way in the last few years on what new is going to be introduced that we can find a use for soybeans. Yeah, right on. Yeah, and the thing is that's pretty cool with North Dakota, and there's kind of a regional research collaboration of states, NCSRP, North Central Soybean Research Program. I got it. How about that? There you go. And there you can even kind of see some real cool things where North Dakota and other states will collaborate and work together with their researching universities and whatnot, and then it gets really exciting, I guess. Oh, cool. Yep. Well, we got to check on the American Ag Network right now. When we come back, we'll rejoin this conversation. I got another check on the forecast, and as always, if you ever have a question, you want to join in on the conversation, 701-293-9000. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hello, Fargo. This is John Adams, your host of Talk of the Town. My show is designed to highlight everything great about the city, the valley, and the country in which we live. I've had the great fortune of meeting, working, and living with wonderful people in the Fargo-Moorhead area, and I want to bring their stories to you. Human interest stories, sports, timely topics that affect all of us in the Red River Valley. Talk of the Town with John Adams. Tune in for positivity and fun.
What do eyewear and weather have in common? Join us for the Aspire Optical Eye on the Sky weekly weather forecast to find out. Each Tuesday morning, Dean Wysocki, Justin Storm, and myself, Ashley Freeborn, owner of Aspire Optical, will bring you the 7-day forecast.
You never know where we'll be or how it will be presented, but we promise to bring you the most accurate forecast this side of the Red River.
And learn how you can save big on eyewear from Aspire Optical.
Watch the Aspire Optical Eye on the Sky weekly weather forecast on our Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter pages.
Trust us, this is weather and eyewear like you've never seen.
Hi, Teresa here, the owner of the Fargo Red Wing Shoe Store. I want to take a minute and thank you for shopping your local small businesses. By shopping at your local small businesses, you're investing in your community and helping create local jobs. As a small business owner, I am able to choose unique products just for you. I'm a friend, I'm your neighbor. Invest in your community and shop local. Thank you from the Red Wing Shoe Store. Red Wing Shoes for ultimate durability.
You go with what works, you trust your experience, and make decisions based on proven results. That is why ag producers like you have chosen Dakota Bank for over half a century and made us one of the largest ag lenders in the nation. Hi, I'm Chad Prewy, ag banker with Dakota Bank in Fargo. No matter the challenges, we are here to help you navigate the highs and lows to grow your business by financing your operating needs, improve your land, or purchase equipment. We all rely on you, and we're just happy to return the favor. Go with allies, go with trust, go with Dakota Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC, trust and insurance are not FDIC insured.
Grain markets sharply higher. You're listening to the American Ag Network. I'm Jesse Allen with this market update. We're joined now by Arlen Suderman of StoneX. Arlen, we have the grain market sharply higher midday Monday, led by this wheat trade. I know we have a lot swirling around the markets between the hot weather, the Black Sea issues. It's Fed week on Wall Street as well. There's a lot going into this these market moves here today, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly right. And the Fed's, the market's basically pricing in nearly 100% odds that the Fed's going to raise interest rates another 25 basis points on Wednesday. But it expects no more rate hikes beyond that. In fact, it's expecting rate cuts through most of next year. And so, in other words, the market's pricing in a pivot. And so if we're going to have a pivot and we're going to have a soft landing, which is the market's interpretation right now, that allows them to focus more on the commodities and anticipated increase in demand for commodities and increased risk of supply concerns. And that's where the Black Sea region comes in, with things really escalating now between Russia and Ukraine, putting that at risk. It's not treating necessarily a shortage of corn and wheat right now, because Russia's dumping a lot of cheap wheat on the world market now, and Brazil's harvesting a bumper corn crop it's dumping on the market at cheap prices right now. But it's pricing in a war premium, a risk that down the road those supplies will be limited because of the escalation that we're seeing in the Black Sea region right now.
All right, we appreciate the update and the analysis. Arlen Suderman with StoneX for our market analysis here on this Monday. Wheat sharply higher, locked up the daily limit in many contracts. Quart of beans up anywhere from 15 to 25 cents higher this hour. This is the American Ag Network. I'm Jesse Allen reporting.
And welcome back to Weather and Ag in Focus, 152 on this Monday afternoon. It's July 24th. Check on the temperatures outside, still approaching at 90 degrees. Got a full check on the forecast coming up here in about 6 minutes. But we're going to rejoin our conversation with the North Dakota Soybean Council. And Miki, you were telling me in between the breaks about a little pest and what it's doing to some of the crops around the area. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about the soybean cyst, man, that's a hard word to say, I guess. Nematode. What is that?
So soybean cyst nematode is a yield robbing pest that we have in some of our soils, especially it's more established in the Red River Valley and starting to expand other parts of the North Dakota. Initially, we didn't have it, but some other parts of the United States has it. So it gradually finds its way to North Dakota and started to establish in this state. It is one of the serious pests we have with the threat to expand its acres and impact or significantly impact soybean yield at the end of the day.
So is the council doing anything about this? Any outreach, any research on how to combat it?
We have been working from the beginning. We have been working with NDSU Extension, especially Dr. Sam Markell and Dr. Guiping Yen, to try to get a better handle on that pest. So we funded over the years soybean cyst nematode sampling program. So basically, farmers have ability to send their soil samples to the soil testing lab, and the council covered the cost of that testing. And from that results, Dr. Sam Markell and his team developed some soybean cyst nematode distribution map. And we compiled data over the years, and we can clearly see that pest is the numbers are increasing and starting to establish in North Dakota. So we have been supporting that test and making the sampling program freely available for farmers so that they know if their field is being impacted by soybean cyst nematode or not, and if they are, how badly the yields are impacted by that pest.
And this is something you can get rid of?
No, unfortunately not. If it's there, it's there. Yes, I think some of the management practices that's recommended is contain and keep it or limit the spread of this pest. Obviously, in farming, soil moves very quickly from field to field, but we want to eliminate the soil movement. If farmers have that pest established in one field, we recommend that try to limit the movement of that soil so that we don't expand the spread of that
right,
pest.
So kind of like boats between lakes and lakes, pressure wash your boats off before you go to another field?
Absolutely, absolutely. And also crop rotation is another one. And there are some products that farmers can use as seed treatment, but the results are varying, or we're receiving some varying degree of success. But the basically we're trying to understand the spread and the populations of that pest and limit the spread of it, and use crop rotation, rotating to non-host crops, and trying to avoid the increase of population. Okay. And this program has been going on very in the past few years, and it has been one of our very successful programs. So a lot of farmers participate in this program, and it's a win-win. We can help farmers, and they can help themselves mitigate the risk of this threat.
Okay. And Joe, anything you want to add on to that with maybe what you're doing over with NDSU and your specialties?
Yeah, so one of the main things I wanted to talk about or tie into the soybean cyst sampling program that the Soybean Council has funded is we're going to be conducting a herbicide-resistant weed survey focused on a few primary driver weeds, namely water hemp and Palmer amaranth, but we're using a very similar sampling system as the soybean cyst nematode program. So for farmers or agronomists who have used the cyst sampling program, know you can go to your county office, get some sampling bags, postage is paid for, so you basically get the sample as per the instructions that's provided, and send it in for testing. And we're going to do the same thing with resistant weeds. Again, the primary focus for us would be water hemp and Palmer amaranth. And the other thing I'll just add with how we're conducting this sampling program for weeds this upcoming year is, for those who have ever gotten a weed tested for herbicide resistance in the past, it can be a slow process, relatively, where we usually require seed, and then we need to grow that out in the greenhouse, spray it, and then see if we can control those populations in the greenhouse. So it's essentially recreating a field season over the winter. A pretty slow process for those who want immediate results. We'll be working with a lab in Fargo, the National Ag Genotyping Center, for this project, and they will actually take leaf samples, extract DNA, and for some of the resistances that we're testing for, there's known markers within water hemp and Palmer amaranth, and we can get relatively quick results within 7 days, depending on how many samples come in. So much quicker process as well. So easier sampling program, postage is paid for, and quicker results for the project we're conducting this late summer into the winter.
Cool. Well, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming in and educating us a little bit more about the herbicide-resistant weeds and what the council's doing and what it is. Dr. Joe Ikley, if anyone wants to get more information on the different types of herbicide-resistant weeds or any more information like that through the extension services, any website or place they could go to get more of that information?
Yeah, so for me, easiest for me is use Google or your search engine of choice, my name or just NDSU Weed Science. We have a couple web pages up there. Probably the easiest way to find information.
Awesome. And Miki, anywhere someone can go to get more information about the North Dakota Soybean Council?
Yes, the North Dakota Soybean Council information, as well as some of the information for the surveys that we mentioned, will be available at ndsoybean.org. So if you need information or be part of or willing to be part of those survey, visit our website, ndsoybean.org.
Awesome. And Dallas, is that the same place someone can go to if they want to get a hold of their representative for whatever district they're in, or any other contact information?
Yeah, right on the website, and my contact info would be on there. If you're from my area or someone else's, you can search it out that way. You bet.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys a lot. Really appreciate it. Final check on the forecast to kind of come up with the Jay Thomas Show at 2:06, but real quick, we're looking at hot conditions in the 90s through Thursday, a chance for some isolated strong storms on Thursday, a couple scattered showers on Tuesday, a maybe storm Tuesday evening, and then just hot and humid conditions through the rest of the week. So thanks for joining us. We're back tomorrow, 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The Jay Thomas Show is next.
AM 970 and FM 93.1, WDAY.